Hello, all. How we feeling? All right, well, I don't know if you can tell by my voice, but Can has gotten the best of me, as I'm sure many of you feel, but I am so excited to be here with these two who are going to offer so much insight into what the media landscape looks like right now. But before we dive in, I want to first take a moment to even acknowledge the fact that we're now in a time where a panel like this exists, where athletes have platforms they own, that they can grow, that they lead, allows them to tell their stories, and where media companies embrace it and have the power to amplify and play a very pivotal role in that. So for you, Draymond, your rookie year, did you ever think this would be what media looked like?
Absolutely not. I think when I first came into the league, you were also very skeptical of what you were going to say. You see players taking stands on different things. That wasn't the case. And like to look at where it's at. I've been in the NBA 12 years now, so it's been quite a bit. But to look at where it's at today, I think it's incredible, and I think it's also important that although it's player-driven media, athlete-driven, it's still a partnership with traditional media, and that's what I think the beauty has been. It's not like, oh, we wiped this out and it's just that. Like, it's a great partnership, and I think when you hit the partnership on the head on both sides, it's starting to look great for us.
Like you feel like they complement one another?
100%. Like even when you look at the name, the new media, it kind of started based on, you had traditional media, but I'm like, there's a new way of doing it. Yet, when you really explain to everybody what it is or where it came from, they realize like, oh, I'm a part of that as well. So it's been a pretty cool journey.
No, it absolutely has been. For you, Conal, what trends did you begin noticing early on that signified that this sort of media was emerging and would be successful?
I think, first of all, for people to recognize that when you think of all the media we consume, from the Netflix shows we love to binge to the social media accounts we follow, a third of all of that media is just audio. So we live in a world primarily here at Cannes Lions, the other 51 weeks of the year, in sight, sound, and motion. But a third of what we consume is just sound. I think marketers are catching up to this fact. They're like, wait, I invest heavily. I'm probably over-invested in sight, sound, and motion. What about sound? The reason that's on their radar more than ever is because, honestly, of creators like Draymond, where I think 10, 20, 30 years ago, the stories that you would have gotten about things like sports, you might have had to wait 10, 20, 30 years until an athlete hung it up, stopped, and wrote the tell-all book. Today, you are literally getting that in real time. I have literally seen post-show interviews where you're like, I'll tell the rest of this story on my podcast. That direct access, first of all, yes, it's awesome for our medium, but it's also a new way to do media, like literally, where it's like the access you might have had to wait a decade to buy the book. I'm going to do that in a few hours on any app where you want to listen to podcasting. I think that's how audio is. We use these words a lot at Cannes, but like it's literally reinventing storytelling. That's pretty cool.
That's really interesting. I want to stick there with audio for a second because how has the measurement of audio evolved in recent years?
Anything you can measure, track, target, any attribution, to get technical about it, any attribution tools that you layer on to digital media at large, whether it's display or video or search or social, you can now do in audio and, yes, in podcasting. To get really technical for a second, when we think about all of the consumption that's happening in audio, I said a third of all media consumed is audio. 75% of that is broadcast radio. Still today. So the real challenge has been for us at iHeart, we have 1,000 broadcast radio stations running in all 50 states 24/7, is to take that and make it available through programmatic channels, which is how more and more buyers want to buy their media. That's okay. We just did that. We started out doing it with a tool called Magnite. That I think will unlock this as much as the storytellers pushing this. That just simple bedrock capability will unlock audio a bunch. That's the first step.
For sure. So, he was talking about how now you don't have to wait for the athlete tell-all book. You can just listen to their podcast. What power have you found in that?
You know, it's very interesting because when I started, all right, so I had a podcast before. It was called Dre Day. It was awful. And and I always knew I wanted to get back into it, but when I first started, I wasn't ready. Like, I would do a podcast. If it didn't work in the schedule, do another one a month later, another one 3 weeks later, then 6 weeks. It was awful. And I knew I wanted to get back into the space at some point, but I knew it had to be with the right partner. And initially, I thought it had to be with the right co-host. When I didn't find the co-host, I was like, all right, I'll just start it by myself and see how it goes. And that was kind of just it. Like, have a medium, you know, have a different channel that you could build up and speak on. I didn't realize the power that came with it until I started going. The audience started building, and then you start seeing, like, clips of it pop up, and then it's driving the conversation. Then something crazy happens with me on the court, and I need to go talk about it. And you could kind of see it snatching all the power away from the media. Like, they want to build a certain narrative. And I think one really big moment was in the playoffs against when we were playing against the Grizzlies. And I got kicked out of the game, and I went, shh.
And danced on the way out.
And I walked, literally, showered and walked right to the hotel and start podcasting. And everybody was calling me crazy and like, how dare you? You don't take this serious enough. Like, no, I actually take it very serious, which is why I'm sitting here. And to see the power that came with that, you started to see a shift. I felt like it was in that moment where everybody was in the NBA, the guys who were saying, oh, like, I don't think we can do that or we shouldn't be doing that. It was that moment in the NBA that it flipped. And it was all about, all right, now we can drive our own narrative at any point. Doesn't matter what the situation is. And it was a bunch of power that came with it that I had no idea was coming.
And it's creating that narrative because we all know that for athletes, it's easy to get stuck in that narrative. People don't let you move out of it. And I think for you and the show, you know, you are a very influential person. People listen to what you have to say. But what responsibility does that come with? And how do you also uphold that while working with brands?
It's a huge responsibility. So number one, as an active player, I'm also speaking on other players at times, which can get pretty interesting because you have to find a fine way to do it. Because I could be teammates with this guy tomorrow, right? So I can't just go out there and do it the traditional way that we see it now. And like, if this thing or this guy is a little off, you kind of just go in on the top. I can't do that, you know. But yet I still need to be critical. You're only going to come back to the show if you feel like I'm being truthful. If there's a topic and you want to hear about it, and I kind of dodge it, then it's not authentic. And so I've found that it's a very fine balance, and you can be very critical of guys. You don't have to attack guys, and I think at times in media now, we see a lot of attacks. And so my thing has been be critical, but don't attack anyone. And, you know, I think I found a good balance, but it's been some trial and error. You get some guys that's upset. I've had my coaches upset at times. I've had front office upset at times. But just like anything else, it's trial and error.
Conal, when you all are working with audio creators, how much autonomy do they have under a media network like iHeart?
Full autonomy. So I think you said something interesting that sort of plays into this question, which is you can be authentic. I think, you know, this is one of these words we use a lot, but I think in podcasting, you can be authentic. It doesn't mean you're mean. It just means like you're speaking your truth from the heart, whatever words you want to layer onto it. I think even if people on the other side of that are like, why'd you say that about me? If they recognize it's coming from a place where that's just what I thought. It's not that I don't like you as a person. You can ride that very cool line as a creator between I'm authentic, I'm genuine, but I'm not mean. Full autonomy. This is what podcasting is very, very good at. It's you know, usually in media, if you're a creative at an agency or in a brand, you have this sort of adage of fast, cheap, and good, pick two. You never get all three. And podcasting came along and let people get all three all the time. So, easy example of this was about 4 years ago, Will Ferrell wanted to launch a podcast based on the Ron Burgundy IP. So he came to iHeart Media, he's like, I want to keep playing with this character. I don't really know what to do with it, but I want to challenge myself and strip away everything visual and see if I can keep this idea going just in audio and make it funny. And so we launched this thing called the Ron Burgundy podcast. We made 4 seasons of it. It was awesome. It was just awesome. But what he realized fast was, he's like, this medium's crazy, like fast, cheap, and good. I get all three all the time. So the coolest thing he did was the next step, which was he launched this slate called, which Colin Cowherd did, called The Volume, which is what your thing's on. But Will Ferrell launched a slate of shows called Big Money Players Network. It was literally just a way for him to find the wave of next awesome comedians in the United States and support them in the medium that he felt like was best at that right now. None of that works unless you're like, you're full autonomy, do your thing, this is what this medium's best for. I'll add one more detail to it, which is critical. Podcasting is maybe the biggest last medium that has not been search engine optimized. So to get technical on this, every single piece of content that you guys make, you are reverse engineering that piece of content from the places you're going to distribute it. You want it to be page 1 Google. You want it to trend on a social media platform. And there are specs that you follow to make that more likely so that it can get discovered. Podcasting has resisted that. It is still a medium that you discover pretty organically on apps as you see fit. And that means that creators just tell it like it is. They don't have a background voice in their head say, well, it's got to be 1 minute and 27 seconds because that's the optimal length of a video for XYZ. It's a really interesting medium for that reason. It gives you this creative freedom that I think is absent a little bit or has gone away from other media types.
That's really interesting because now I'm curious what you think this trend of audio and how audio works also says about how society consumes things. That in this time, this is able to be so popular.
I'll just say one thing because you guys want to hear from him a lot more than me. But like, I'll say one thing. We asked a few thousand people about 3 months ago, hey, podcasting is getting so big in the United States. What are you doing less of? You got to be doing something less of. I thought, candidly, that everyone would say, I'm listening a little bit less to broadcast radio. About 1 out of 5, 1 out of 4 said that. 7 out of 10 respondents said, I'm consuming less social media. Now, I'm not suggesting social media is going to go away. It's a fabric of our life. But that's remarkable to me, that you have this shift from a media type that's fundamentally different into more long-form, tell it like it is conversations. And to your point, I think that might be a good thing in a year like 2024, when we're in a moment as America that's going to be hard for the next 6 months. I like that stat as much as I'm surprised by it.
No, that's a great answer. I mean, speaking of social media, Draymond, you have a strong presence on all social platforms, Instagram, X, TikTok, and of course your own podcast, The Draymond Green Show. Little plug for you all if you are not subscribed. So you have built a media empire. How do you use each platform differently?
I don't quite think I've built an empire yet. I want to. If I'm honest, I don't think I use the platforms enough. I think I've done a great job with the podcast and kind of just leaning all into that. But if I had one complaint about myself, it's that I don't tie them all together. I think naturally I promote the podcast on Instagram, on Twitter, but I think there's so much more that I can do. And I think that's a side, when you take a step back and you look at the areas of growth, like that's one that's huge for me. Of, diving into the social media side to even promote this even more. I have young kids, like 9, and obviously they love the TikTok. I won't let my daughter get on TikTok. She'll find it on YouTube somehow. But they love the TikToks. They love all those things. And that is the next generation also who's going to consume these podcasts and different things that we talk about. It's looking, as we continue to go, like that'll be a medium that kind of drives their generation. And so If I could tie them all together better, I'd be a lot happier with myself. But I don't think I've done a good job of tying the two together.
Well, we're working on it. We're working on it. Draymond, you and I talk a lot about just the importance of knowing who you are, owning who you are. How are you thinking about brand partnerships and deciding what's right and what fits your brand?
About 6 years ago, I realized, after 5 years ago maybe, after 7 years in the NBA, I've done this deal, I've done that deal, done the deal over here, no connectivity. And so then I kind of took a step back and pulled out everything. And I just had my sneaker deal. And I made a decision then that if I partner with a brand, it's going to be authentic to me. I'm going to be able to tell a story with this brand that can date back to my childhood or to high school, or to college, to early years in NBA. Because those are the authentic stories that people want to hear. You start to, what I started to realize is you partner with this brand, they know what story they want to tell, and that's just it. Well, that doesn't quite live on for me. It lives on for the brand, but it stops for me is the moment I finish that commercial or the moment that spot goes off of TV. If we're telling authentic stories, we started to see branded content more as opposed to the traditional commercial. But if we tell a story that also can live on with me, then that story, that commercial continues to live. And those spots continue to live. And so I just wanted to pull back and do only brands that are authentic to me, things that I use. How is this brand close to me? Do I eat this, something from this brand? Do I drink something from this brand? And really just try to partner with the brands that's close to me that I love, because if I love the brand, it's a great partnership. It's easier to sell.
Yeah. And that goes back to what we were saying about authenticity. You want the partnerships to also reflect who you are. Conal, you talked a little bit about Magnite, but I want to touch on that some more. So this is a new marketplace collaboration that helps unify inventory for broadcast radio, streaming radio, and podcast ads. How is this changing the landscape for iHeart?
It gets a little technical for a couple minutes, but it is really important as audio explodes. So to be clear, audio, again, is on our radars because creators like Draymond are making great content through podcasting. That's why we're talking about it more. The bedrock of audio consumption in the United States, 75% of all audio consumed, is broadcast radio. So what's happening in media is you have a lot of brands and holdcos, advertising agencies, ramping up their audio spend. They're starting to realize, wow, this is a really effective channel. I have listeners and audiences that are more engaged than other stuff. I'm going to spend more. The challenge that they're facing and are going to face more and more is in digital audio, there is not enough inventory to true up the gap between how much they're spending today and how much people are listening to audio, because a bunch of it is broadcast radio. So if I'm a marketer in the United States, I'm going to say, okay, I understand that, but I like to buy stuff through what's called demand-side platforms, DSPs. Magnite is one of them. I like to buy stuff programmatically. It's machine buying, to put it very simply. We have figured out a way at iHeart to take all that broadcast radio stuff and make it look and feel like digital audio through demand-side platforms. So as technical as all that is, all it means is we've unlocked a whole bunch of audio listening that wasn't accessible previously to people who wanted to buy it through programmatic channels. And as technical as that is, it's a pretty big deal for media, because it means that while the wave of audio is getting pushed by creators like Draymond, now the inventory is there to satisfy the appetite that I think will grow. That's our partnership with Magnite. We're psyched about it. We've been talking about it all week.
Yeah, I was going to say, I can tell by how you're talking about it. You're clearly passionate about what this specific can move for or mean for the landscape, no? Yes. Yeah, I can tell. I love that. Okay, I want to know, what do the next 5 years look like for the audio entertainment space? And what do the next 5 years look for athletes in the audio entertainment space? Whoever wants to go first.
I gotta go first?
Absolutely.
That's totally not fair. I feel like we didn't mention AI in a panel, and we'd all be like drowned in the ocean or something. So here's what's cool about AI. We at iHeart, Draymond's a part of this. We're a little unique in that we've been doing podcasts for a long time. We have a huge library of episodes in our archives. The ability to take that library and translate it in language and distribute that around the world is now here. A year ago, it wasn't. We've been testing this for 2, 3, 4 years, and it's been ramping. The quality has been ramping very quickly. So you can take the archive of a show you might have that has 2,000 episodes, that's pretty globally appealing and evergreen content, translated into 10, 20 languages and ship that around the world. That's awesome because of one simple reason. Like, we've talked about podcasting as an incredible new way to tell a story. It's also genuinely the newest mass reach medium in the United States. Like, straight up, that's a done thing now. You have 130 million Americans a month listening to podcasts. By the way, in my career, I will not see another new mass reach medium. It is incredibly rare. You have to have creators want to do it. You have to have hardware, Apple, want to distribute it. You have to have software, us, Pandora, Spotify, a bunch of other apps distributing podcasts. And then if you're lucky, you'll get audiences being like, oh, I'm in too. That just happened in podcasting. But sort of just happened in the United States. It's not to say there's not podcast listening outside the US, but it is only a mass reach medium in the US. The ability now to use AI, translate and ship that stuff around the world in language and country will globalize what, for my money, is the coolest mass reach medium in the US right now.
Truly transformative technology, for sure. What about for you? Next 5 years of athlete-led content?
I think we'll start to see, I think there's been an influx in athletes starting their own podcasts and different production companies and things of that such. I think we'll start to see more storytelling along the way. Like, you get some of these kids now that are coming up in the athlete world, the young athletes, 14, 15 years old. They're sometimes more focused on branding than the actual career, which I find interesting. Yet, I think it'll actually continue to move further that way. And I think you'll start to see younger athletes starting their own platforms and telling their story as they go. You get I was once a 15-year-old athlete playing high school basketball, playing AAU basketball. I think we'll start to hear those stories. And you'll get those kids then becoming the 18-year-olds that's the top player going to college and the NIL and all those different things. And then they'll take you on their journey on the way to the NBA, on the way to the NFL, on the way to the Major League Baseball, and so on and so forth. So I think we'll start to see more storytelling, more brand building from athletes, telling their own stories along the way and building up IP that they own, that they can monetize.
That's important.
100%. I think we're starting to see, you got a lot of guys coming into the podcast space first on almost like 360 deals back when music was doing those. And I think you're starting to see now athletes take over, own their content, own their IP, and I think we'll see more of that, but I think we'll start to see also the storytelling as we go. Through these careers, the storytelling will be aligned with that, kind of similar to like, you can follow Jay-Z's life through his music. Like from dope boy to successful businessman in business with LVMH. Like, you can follow that entire thing. And I think that's what's coming for athletes as well.
Yeah, no, I would agree, because we're already seeing the genesis of that right now. Well, no, I have truly enjoyed learning about this technology, the emergence of audio, the importance of owning your narrative and storytelling, and also having your own IP, because that's an important aspect as well. So I'm very thankful for your insight. Please give it up for these two, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you both.